Well, with Annabelle creation being a promising entry in the Annabelle, I guess, subdivision of the Conjuring Universe, is the third Annabelle movie, Annabelle Comes Home, a step in the right direction? Let's discuss. Annabelle Comes Home stars Vera Farmiga, Patrick Wilson, McKenna Grace, and is directed by Gary Dauberman. What's up, guys? It's time for a brand new 2019 review. The Conjuring Universe is a universe that just keeps soldiering on. And my stance on this series of films is they're okay. They're nothing special. Some are better than others. None was a complete atrocity to me. But I guess the one thing I do like about it is it's like you never know what you're going to get. And Annabelle creation surprised me. That one was actually very effective. I think David Sandberg did a great job of creating scares without leaning on all those horror tropes that we kind of get sick of. And so really from there, the Annabelle universe could really go anywhere. This one kind of interested me. And after watching it, it's not the worst in the Conjuring universe, but it does have some problems. But there's definitely hope. So looking forward to diving into this one with you guys. First off, quick plot synopsis. Now, I will say, out of all the Conjuring Universe movies, this is probably the simplest. It's really babysitting in this house, which happens to be the Warrens' house. And, of course, you know, the Warrens' haunted room, you know, of all these, like, demonic possessions and evil entities and spirits and all that stuff. Of course, it gets let loose, and then we have the settings of a fun horror movie. And that's really what happens at the beginning of this movie. We see the Warrens, and they are recollecting the Annabelle doll from this other couple who the doll wreaked havoc on, and so they're getting it home. So if you're looking at this movie as a Warrens movie, like in the Conjuring movies, you're not going to get that. You know, they bookend the movie really. But the main cast of this movie really is the Warrens' daughter, Judy, and these two girls, one that's babysitting Judy and her friend. And one girl in particular, Daniela, she recently lost her father, and so she's trying to reconnect with him, and so we need a reason why we'd want one of these girls to get down into that crazy room that nobody would ever dare go into, right? So that's what she does, and that's when I guess the horror starts really picking up. Now, this is one of those movies that's like split right down the middle for me, okay? So let's start off with the good, and the good being, thankfully, is the simple story. I think is very effective, actually. This it makes for a really fun, like October type of movie. Like I'm surprised they didn't release this in October, because this is one that would be fun on a Saturday night with a date. It really would. And as a matter of fact, the theater I saw this in, I would say it was at least half full. And that crowd was having a really good time with this movie, you know. And you could tell a lot of these young people, they were on dates with each other. And every time, you know, like there's one scene where Daniela's down there, and you hear like this music box, the lid drops, and everybody in the theater just jumped. You know, there's always one or two people that they're very vocal in these movies, and that just makes for a funner movie-going experience. And there are like a couple of different occasions where the character Daniela is in this room. You know, one that's like in daytime, and then one's at night. And both actually are very effective. And I have to give credit to Gary Dauberman for, you know, trying to get creative with these scares. You know, this is a universe that you do see a lot of jump scares in these types of films. There are jump scares in this movie, but I will say Gary Dauberman actually gets pretty creative with a lot of these. You know, he doesn't depend on jump scares. He finds ways to, you know, lean on the shadows, really pump up the sound design. You know, these are two things that work really well with creating scares. You know, you don't have to constantly use jump scares. And so the very few times that he does use jump scares in this movie, it doesn't really work. And we're going to get into more of that in the cons in terms of scares. But there are some pros in terms of scares. I will say the sound design is very effective, actually. There's quite a few moments where in the theater, you could definitely hear the horror, you know, at every turn. And, you know, there's a lot of great camera movements using misdirection and all that stuff. This is stuff you really want to see in a good horror movie. And I think it did work, actually, pretty well. Another thing that I really liked about this was how it just focused on these 3 young girls. Specifically Judy, who plays the Warrens' daughter in this. This young actress that played her, who really reminds me of a very young Gina Malone, she was very effective, actually. And, you know, I always talk about, you know, actors and actresses and how they need to project, you know, sell yourself, give a good performance. Well, also the flip side of that is you need to know when to show restraint. And this young actress, McKenna Grace, really does a great job showing restraint in this role, because this is a character, you know, let's face it, her parents are the Warrens, you know, and they constantly deal with, you know, these really scary things in life. And so how would that affect a kid? And so they do kind of focus on that throughout this movie from time to time. And I think it works really well. You know, there's a real calmness to this character, actually, so that when she does have to deal with, you know, like say Annabelle, you're really focused in on what she's going to do, because like she's been really calm throughout this whole thing. She's seasoned, you know, because she's learned from her parents how to deal with this stuff. And so I found her the most interesting easily. But the other 2 girls, they serve their purpose. I think Danielle is really interesting too, actually. So now let's jump into the cons of this movie, because there are definitely some cons. First off, in the scares, we were talking about the scares. When you're creating horror scares, you definitely want to have a lead up, but you also want to have a payoff. There's plenty of lead up in this movie, but there's very little payoff. That's my biggest problem with this movie. Every time there would be a character and they would be stretching out this scare, you know, some of these scares, they would go on for a good 5 minutes. And so you're wanting them to really drive it home with the payoff, you know, because there's so many great examples of this in horror movies. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen that often in this movie. You know, they go for the quick cliche type of payoff, and it kind of gets tiring after a while. So really, you're just kind of leaning on the lead up. And also, without really going into any spoilers, I think you're going to know what I'm talking about. There is a such thing as plot armor with these particular types of movies, especially in the Conjuring universe and really in possession movies. You know, I'm not going to say it happens in this movie, but I will say a lot of times most of the characters live near the end. You know, they're safe. That's one thing that I was worried about watching this movie. And let me just put it this way. With how many horrific events happening in this movie, if every character in this movie died, I would not be surprised. You know, there's some crazy stuff going on. So that's kind of a pro and kind of a con. But I will say, you know, I'm always giving PG-13 horror a hard time, but there were some genuine scares in this movie. So, you know, I definitely have to give it that. And I'll give it just a straight down the middle humdrum. It was better than I thought it was going to be. I thought this was not going to be that good at all because, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of this Conjuring universe. They're hit and miss for me, but I think this one worked pretty well. If I did a ranking, it would probably be right down like the middle, just like the score for the movie. So anyway, guys, post in the comments your thoughts on Annabelle Comes Home. Looking forward to hearing them. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do Free For All Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.